My name is Del Ashworth. I fix things for a living. I work in a small repair shop on Kestrel Station, a tired old outpost at the edge of nowhere. Ships come in here with more holes than metal, flown by people who cannot afford a real dry dock. I do not talk much. I never have. Some people fill a room with their voice. I fill it with quiet and with the sound of tools. That is probably why he did not run from me. I found him in the scrap bay, pushed between a dead reactor coil and a stack of old hull plating that nobody had bothered to recycle. He was small, for his kind, but still about the size of a large dog. His scales were copper-colored, and his eyes were too big for his face, the way a young animal's eyes always are. His tail kept getting caught in loose cables. One of his wings was folded the wrong way, crushed like a piece of paper that someone had crumpled and never smoothed back out. He was shaking, even though the room was not cold. "Hey," I said, because that is usually where I start with frightened animals, and I was not fully sure yet that he was not one. He flinched so hard that he knocked over a crate of bolts. "No one ever wanted me," he said. His voice came out broken and small, carried through a translator patch clipped to the coil behind him. The patch was low on power, and it crackled, but I understood every word. They said I hatched wrong. They said I was a waste of space in my clutch. They left me on the trade dock for the scrap collectors, because scrap collectors take anything nobody else wants. I have fixed a lot of broken things in my life, mostly ships, sometimes people, in the small ways that a wrench and a steady voice can manage. I did not know anything about creatures like him. I still do not really, not in any way you could write down in a manual. But I knew the sound of something that had given up hope of ever being wanted. I had heard that sound before, in my own voice, a long time ago, when I was young and nobody wanted a quiet boy who liked machines more than people. "I am not a scrap collector," I told him. "I am a mechanic. There is a difference." "Is there really a difference?" he asked. "Scrap collectors only see what is already broken. Mechanics see what a thing could still become." I lowered myself down slowly, keeping my hands where he could see them, the same way I would move around a nervous animal, or a new pilot flying their first mission alone. "Do you have a name?" He did not one that had been given to him with any care. I learned later that his kind, called the Vinaic, only named their hatchlings after the hatchling's first flight. Since his wing meant he would probably never fly, nobody had bothered to give him a name at all. To them, a dragon that cannot fly is not really a dragon, just a lizard with big dreams. I fix broken wings for a living, just not this kind. Usually I am talking about a stabilizer fin, or a solar panel, or an engine part that keeps a ship steady in the sky. But the idea is the same. Something is supposed to work, and it does not, so you find out why, and then you find a way to make the break matter less, or you fix it completely. "We will find you a name," I said, later. "I think a name should be earned, not just handed out." I held out my hand slowly. "For now, come inside. It is warmer in the shop, and I have food that will not hurt you, probably." He stared at my hand for a long time. So long that I began to think I had made a mistake, that I was about to lose a few fingers to a scared animal much stronger than me. Then he pressed his face into my palm and made a small sound. I did not understand the sound, but I did not need to. I called him Bolt, because that is what he was chewing on when I found him, and because I am not a poet. I am a mechanic. Mechanics name things after whatever is right in front of them. The first few weeks were hard. Bolt did not trust easily, and I could not blame him. He would flinch whenever I moved too fast. He would not eat unless I sat far away and pretended not to watch. At night, he curled into the smallest ball he could manage, tail wrapped tight around himself, as if trying to disappear. I did not push him. I just kept showing up. Every morning I brought him food. Every evening I sat near him and talked about my day, even though he probably did not understand half of what I said. I talked about broken engines, and stubborn customers, and the weather patterns on the station's weather deck. Slowly, very slowly, he began to relax. One evening, about 3 weeks in, he came and sat beside me while I worked on an old engine part. He watched my hands move. He watched the way I held the tools, the way I turned each piece over before deciding what to do with it. "Why do you look at it so carefully?" he asked. "Because every part has a story," I said. "You cannot fix something properly if you do not understand what happened to it first." He was quiet for a moment. "Does that work for people too, or for dragons?" I looked at him. "I think it works for anything that breathes." After that night, he started following me everywhere in the shop. He would watch me weld, watch me measure, watch me test circuits. He asked questions constantly, more questions than I had ever been asked by anyone in my life. I found that I did not mind. In fact, I looked forward to it. It took me 4 months to build him a wing. not a real one. I want to be honest, because I believe honesty matters more to a young creature, human or otherwise, than comfort does. I told him from the beginning, I cannot give you back what your body never had. I can give you something that does the same job anyway. He did not understand at first what the difference was supposed to mean. I am not sure he believed there was a difference at all. I built the new wing out of old drone frames and small thrusters I had been saving for a personal project I never got around to starting. It turned out my personal project was going to be a 9-year-old dragon instead of a ship. I built lightweight metal supports along the shape of his damaged wing and stretched a thin, strong material across it like a sail. Small thrusters at the tip of the wing would help with the lifting, since his own muscles could not do it all alone. It was not a beautiful design. It made a whining sound whenever it worked, and it smelled faintly of burnt metal and oil, but it worked. The first time he lifted off the ground with it, 10 meters up in the cargo bay, wobbling like a newborn animal learning to stand, he screamed. For one terrible second, I thought something had gone wrong. I was already moving toward the emergency switch before I understood. He was not screaming in pain. He was screaming because, for the very first time in his life, gravity had not won. I stood there and watched him fly in shaky, uneven circles above the bay, laughing in a way I had never heard him laugh before, and I felt something warm settle in my chest. It was the same feeling I get when a ship that should not fly anymore lifts off the ground and does not fall back down. Pride, maybe, or something close to it. From that day on, Bolt flew every single evening, at first only in the cargo bay, where it was safe and enclosed. Later, once he grew more confident, I took him outside the station in a small transport pod and let him fly along the outer hull, under the wide-open dark of space, with the station's lights glowing behind him like a string of small stars. He grew fast after that, not just in size, though he did grow taller and stronger, his scales shifting from a dull copper to a brighter, warmer shade. He grew in confidence, too. He stopped flinching at sudden movements. He started making jokes, clumsy at first, then sharper and funnier as time passed. He teased me about my terrible cooking. He teased me about how I talked to my tools like they could hear me. You know they cannot understand you, he said one day, watching me mutter at a stubborn Bolt. Neither could you. Once, I said. Look how that turned out. He laughed, a warm rolling sound, nothing like the frightened cry I had first heard from him. We built a life together, the two of us. I taught him how engines worked, how to read a diagram, how to tell when a machine was about to fail before it actually did. He taught me things too, though he probably did not realize it. He taught me how to laugh more. He taught me that silence did not always have to be lonely, that sometimes it could simply mean comfort. Two people sitting together with nothing that needed to be said. Word travels, even out here at the edge of nowhere. Word especially travels when it involves a creature like Bolt, rejected or not, because the place he came from, a large and proud group called the Vinaic Dominion, does not like unfinished business. A hatchling who was supposed to quietly disappear on a trade dock is exactly the kind of unfinished business they do not enjoy leaving behind. They came for him almost 1 year to the day after I found him. Their ship was sleek and polished, marked with symbols I did not recognize but somehow understood were important. An elder stepped out first, his scales the pale gray color of ash, old enough that his movements were slow and deliberate, like every step had been planned in advance. The hatchling is Dominion property, he said, his voice flat and metallic through his translator, much clearer and much colder than the old, crackling patch Bolt used to wear. Malformed young are occasionally reclaimed if they prove useful. We received reports of unusual activity from this station. Bolt, who was no longer small, who had spent a year eating well and flying, and being truly seen for the first time in his life, did not hide behind me. There had been a time, long ago now, when he would have. Instead, he stood beside me, his wing quietly humming with steady energy, and I understood in that moment exactly what all my work had been for. Not so that he would never need to face his own battles, but so that he would never again have to face them from the ground, weak and unable to rise. He is not property, I said, keeping my voice calm and even. He has a name. The elder's crest lifted slightly, unimpressed. Names are given only after the first flight. He flew 11 months ago, I said. I was there. So was he. That is more than you can say. Something shifted behind those ash-colored eyes. Not quite doubt. I do not think elders like him allow themselves doubt easily, but something close to it, a quiet recalculation. Then Bolt spoke, in his own voice, steady and clear, with no lag or crackle at all this time, because he had spent a year listening to me talk, and had learned to speak our language fluently, without even meaning to. No one ever wanted me, he said. That is what I was told. right before I was left on that dock, so I stopped waiting for anyone to come back and change their mind. I found someone who wanted me anyway, without needing me to be perfect first. That is not something you can reclaim, Elder. It already happened. You are simply too late. The Elder did not answer. I do not think creatures like him often have answers ready when the conversation stops being about worth and starts being about time that has already passed. They left without him. I do not know if that is truly the end of the story. Pride like theirs does not forget easily, and I have since added stronger sensors around the station, just in case Pride ever decides to try again. But I know it was the end of one chapter, the one where a young creature's entire worth was decided only by the wing he happened to be born with, instead of the one someone chose to build for him. Life on the station went back to something like normal after that, though normal now included a fully grown dragon who liked to sit on my workbench in the evenings while I repaired other people's broken engines. He still asked questions constantly. He still teased me about my cooking. Sometimes other station workers would stop and stare, unsure what to make of a giant, gentle creature calmly watching a human fix machines. But Bolt never seemed to mind the attention anymore. He had learned, somewhere along the way, that being looked at was not the same as being judged. One evening not long ago, he landed beside me after one of his evening flights, folding his wings carefully, and sat down without a word. "Del," he said after a while. "Yeah, Bolt? I do not think I am broken anymore." I did not look up from the part I was fixing. I did not want him to see whatever my face was doing right then. "You were never broken," I told him. "Just unfinished. There is a difference. I told you that on the very first day." He made that same soft sound he always made, the one I still do not have a word for. I still do not need one. These days, if you visit Kestrel Station and walk past the outer hull in the evening, you might see a bright shape gliding through the dark, wings glowing faintly gold from the small thrusters built into them. People sometimes ask me about him, curious about how a human mechanic ended up raising a dragon. I usually just shrug and say the same thing every time. He was not asking to be saved. He was just asking to be wanted. Turned out, that was something I could actually build. And every evening when he lands back beside my workbench, tired and happy from flying, I remember the small, shaking creature I found hidden between a dead reactor coil and a pile of forgotten metal. I remember the broken little voice that once told me no one ever wanted him. I am glad I got the chance to prove that voice wrong.